Welcome to Midlife Matters. I'm Marie, and each week I'm joined by my friends Julie and Mindy to talk about all the topics keeping women in the middle years up at night. Today we're talking about our childhoods. What are the differences between our childhoods and that of our own children and even our grandchildren? Join us as we reminisce about the 70s and 80s. Let's get started. Listeners, today we're talking about our childhoods, and particularly the difference between our childhoods and that of our own children and even our grandchildren. So, Julie, why don't you explain the reel that you recently sent me and Mindy and why it stuck out to you? And before we even get started on that explanation, Mindy wasn't feeling well today, so she's not joining us for our recording, but I know that she also felt that this reel was pretty applicable, even though she is younger than us. Like, it doesn't only span like a certain age group, but I think it is kind of a midlife thing. So why don't you introduce the reel to us?
Okay, this was a TikTok reel, and it said, if you grew up in the 1970s, you probably possess these traits. And then it just talked about how it seemed like a magical time to grow up because of the freedom that kids had, the autonomy and independence that parents could let kids kind of roam free. I think they use the word feral.
Mm-hmm.
And that just, I mean, I don't blame parents now, but I just don't feel like they can do that. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we kind of lived in maybe a special time that's not repeatable. I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
It just really resonated with me, and I just thought of something afterwards. The show The Wonder Years. Do you remember that show?
I do.
Yeah, that was one of my all-time favorite shows. John and I loved watching it. It was set in the 80s, so it had a great 80s soundtrack. And it was kind of a coming of age thing, like just watching this suburban family go through that time period.
Sure.
Yeah. So,
Yeah, I was thinking about when you said kind of a magical time period. I don't think that while we were growing up, or at least myself, I don't think I ever reflected that this felt like a magical time period. This was just our regular childhood. But I think when we compare all the changes that have come about, I do think that when I look back on that childhood time, it was magical because it didn't have a lot of the same stressors that today's children have.
yeah. And I probably didn't think it was magical either at the time, but I will say that I really, really loved my childhood and didn't want it to end.
Mm,
So I think that's a
mhm,
good sign that
mhm,
it was good, you know.
mhm.
I did love the freedom and the autonomy of going places, and nobody knew where I was and
Right.
just told me what time to be back, that felt good.
Well, let's go into the reel a little bit about, why don't you explain it a little bit in more detail, what he was talking about?
All right. He kind of breaks down the childhood that we're describing into these different aspects. He gave him these really kind of big, big name titles, but I think we can kind of make that a little simpler. Like his first one was self directed problem solving. And he said, basically, this just means you knew not to tell your mom you were bored because she'd say, "Go find something to do, or I'll find you something to do." And I thought, yes, I remember those exact words. That
Mhm,
basically you kind of had to invent your whole day from nothing every day. Yeah, I'm kind
mhm,
of thinking summer more than any other time.
mhm,
You know, just because my life was very unstructured in
mhm.
elementary school. I went to school, and that was about the only place I had to be, in church on Sunday.
I'm trying to think of, like, structured things that we went to in the summer. There weren't, like, camps that we went away to for a week or, like, a sports camp or some kind of camp to do with your interest, art camp or anything like that. I mean, I know there probably were summer camps, but I didn't know anyone that went to them, and I didn't go to any of
Mm-mm.
them.
I had never been to summer camp.
I mean, I think maybe people went with their churches, but there wasn't this big thing like there is in today's childhood and like when my kids were growing up, where we have to be registering in February for summer
Yeah.
activities that are going to take place in June and July.
Yeah, and my school, even in elementary school, I ran track for my school, and it was through the county sports system. So we just stayed a little bit after school, and I walked home afterwards, and then we might
Mhm.
have a track meet on Saturday. It really didn't involve my parents much, except for the
No.
track meet on Saturday. and it wasn't all-consuming at all. So I wasn't being driven around to sports teams and practices, and I think I did take piano lessons, but the teacher came to my house. She just went down the street and knocked
Mhm.
went to probably to 5 or 6 houses, and so, other than those things, I my afternoons were pretty free, other than homework.
Right. Having to invent your day from nothing in this reel really stuck out to me, like, I can remember my mom saying, like,
Yeah.
"It's time to go outside. You cannot come back in. Like, you have to go
Yeah.
find something to do." Like, you weren't allowed to go back in, probably till lunch or something, like, you had to go and find your own thing to do, so you might wander around your yard for a little while, and then you probably would either get your siblings together or I kinda lived in a country type setting when I was growing up, so there was another girl my age up the road, so maybe we would get together, or a lot of times it was just my siblings and I, or maybe even just myself. Like, you just had to come up with your own activities, and I remember exploring the woods or playing in the creek or playing on the swing by yourself and having a whole thing go on in your mind of imagination just
Lots
swinging
of
back and forth.
imagination.
Yes,
Yeah.
we had this old A-frame, probably was originally a doghouse in our backyard, and that became a playhouse or, like,
Mhm.
you made your own fun.
Yeah. I remember getting up, and this was maybe a little older, 4th, 5th grade, and I would call my friend, and on the phone, and almost always her parents would answer, so I had to address them first, "Hello, is Kim available, and can Kim come to my house?" Or she'd call me, "Can I go to her house?" We were always bugging our parents about, "Can we go to each other's house?" Or
Mhm.
and then we would sit. I mean, we were bored a lot, you know what I mean? But we just didn't say that. We found things to do, and it was a lot of just wandering and walking and trying to find other people to join in. And I remember at our school, we had a big playground park, and part of the summer park commission, they would send like I don't want to call them a park ranger, but just some kind of staff person that would show up in the morning, and they had lunches, and you could play games. They had organized games. I mean, like, this like kickball, that little box hockey game, and then they always did an art project, and, oh, this was the highlight of my summer was to go to the park. And, I rode my bike or walked, and I was there half the day and came home. It was my mom wasn't driving me everywhere. There was really no need.
That must have been a thing about that time period then that they had free programming at the parks because we also
Mhm.
had free programming at our park, only
Oh,
I
really?
hated it.
Oh, you did?
So we lived outside of town 5 miles. I mean, that is not that far, but to my mother, you would have thought it was 50 miles. And she would pack us all up in the car, the 4 of us, at the beginning of the day, drive us 5 miles down to the park, drop us off where they would feed you a free lunch.
Mhm.
On Mondays, they would take you to about 20 minutes away to a little bigger town. You'd do free swimming lessons. Then you'd
Yeah.
come back on the bus, but it was all run by, teenagers and,
Mhm.
but I hated those I
Oh,
hated those parks. My mother loved them because
I
then
loved it.
then we had something to do all summer, but I did not enjoy them at all. I did not like being dropped off and then picked up at the end of the day after having spent the whole day at the park.
Well, I went on my own free will, and I think my mom always wondered, "What is so appealing about this?" But
Yeah.
not having siblings, I was looking for people, and I knew people were gonna be at the park,
Oh, well,
so that
that's
that
true.
probably had a lot to do with it. You played games, and yeah, I think I
Mhm.
remember going some days were swimming, or you might do something cultural.
I actually think one of the days was also roller skating, where they would take you to the local roller rink, and maybe it was like
Mhm,
$2 to roller skate, and yeah, I mean, really, those were I don't know what they were paid for with by, like, local tax dollars or grants or what, but I kinda wish that had been a thing when my kids were growing up. I think that I would have enjoyed utilizing that because while I didn't necessarily enjoy it, I can see that it was beneficial for us to have some structured activity. It was beneficial for our parents. It was beneficial for even just who we became as people. I mean, you learn to swim, you learn to roller skate, you learn to do
mhm.
crafts, you learn to get along with everybody else at the park like it is, and it was all free. Like,
Yeah,
that's amazing.
and I don't even think you enrolled in it. I mean, it was just show up. and
Mhm.
she was there, and I always thought they were really cool. I
Mhm.
guess they were teenagers, but they
Yeah,
seemed
I think they must.
older
I
to
don't
me,
even
yeah.
think they were teenagers from my town. I feel like maybe they came in from outside of town and ran it for, like, 6 weeks. I'm not sure, but we did a lot of crafts too, like paper mache
Oh, yeah.
and ceramics
Loved
and,
it.
like, all I mean, I did enjoy the craft part for sure, yeah. I don't know if there was the pressure on parents to feel like they had to entertain their kids as much. Like, when
No.
my kids were younger, I felt like you had to entertain your kids and you were going against the grain if you didn't have, like, sports camp lined up and overnight camp, different activities lined up for them. Like, I just felt like that was kind of a more expected thing, and that coulda just been where they grew up or if that just became
Mm,
more common. And also, I felt like as my kids grew up, I needed to have things in the summer because technology and the internet and computers had been invented. And if you didn't provide structured activities, then they would just end up on playing video games or on their devices. And that was like the kiss of death. You don't want your kid just sitting there all day doing that. So you had to think of things that they could be out doing otherwise. And it really put the onus on the parent rather than on the kid.
right, and it became hard if said, "Well, go ride your bike, go out and play kickball," but if the other kids aren't doing that, there's
Hmm.
nobody to play with, and so that became part of the problem was not many people were doing that, so
Hmm.
because they were off at camps and
Mhm.
structured things, so,
Mhm.
um, it wasn't like when I grew up, when you drove down the street, there were just kids everywhere, just
Yeah.
we played in the street.
Right. Yeah.
Um, so you just don't see that anymore. I know there were kids in my neighborhood, but you wouldn't have known it just by looking out the window.
Yeah.
Um, Other than the neighborhood pool. Now that drew a lot of neighborhood kids there.
Mhm.
But I didn't grow up in that kind of neighborhood when I was little to have a neighborhood pool. We did end up getting a pool later, but I remember one thing my friend and I would love to do is we love to cook. So we would bake cookies. I'm sure each mom was hoping we'd do it at the other house. We that's where I learned to bake Toll House cookies with my friend Kim, and then we loved to make tacos. We would make
Okay.
our own lunch. So
Mhm.
we felt so accomplished that we could cook tacos.
Yeah. Well, I definitely do think that I cooked or made my own food a lot more than my kids did. Now, part of this is my own personality as a mom. I didn't love people making their own food because they usually didn't clean it up well. But I had many things that I was allowed to and expected to and could make for myself.
Mhm.
And, that was a given that you would make your own lunch, your own breakfast, and, your mom was pretty much only making dinner. So, you got your own snacks, you were in charge of getting your own food. Whatever you could find was fair game.
Of course, on the downside, that was like a Pop-Tart and cereal for me,
Well,
so
right. When I say things that I could make, it was canned ravioli. It
uh-huh.
was SpaghettiOs. It
Kraft
was
macaroni and cheese.
soup. Yeah, it was yes, a grilled cheese with that cellophane cheese, you could
Yeah.
grab a cold hot dog out of the refrigerator and just go off and
Oh,
eat it
yeah.
if you wanted to. But I'm saying that you were
Would suffice.
expected to eat from what was in the refrigerator and don't bother anybody about it.
No, sadly, I kept that plan with my kids, and I still kind of feel guilty, like, "Did I do the wrong thing not feeding them breakfast and lunch?" But
Yeah,
I
well
figured once they were old enough, they could do it themselves.
yeah. Well, what other than self-directed problem solving, what was the next category?
The next one was called adaptive risk calibration. And basically, that was a fancy way of saying that, we climbed trees, we rode bikes without helmets, we skateboarded without knee pads, we were off on our own. They were saying that, like, all the close calls we had kind of was where it was teaching our brains the difference between actual danger and manageable risk. And
Mm,
I've heard this before,
mhm,
saying that when you let kids climb and you're not there as that safety, not like climb on a playground or something safe
mhm,
or a tree, that they're kind of learning to assess like, "No, this is too much," or, "I can handle this," you know?
mhm,
And whereas today, kids maybe only see that on a screen. They
Mhm.
observe someone else doing it, but not for themselves.
Mhm.
So, the video said, "You broke bones, you got scars." And I do, I still have some scars to prove it, and I did break a bone
Mhm.
in an interesting way. So,
Mm.
I don't know, what about you? Did you ever break a bone?
No.
Okay, because they did say that you hardly see kids in cast anymore, and I thought,
Yeah.
that's kinda true.
Yeah.
And I had the big plaster cast above the elbow
Well, how
all
did
the
you
way
break
down
your
my
bone?
well, we had a swing set in my backyard, and I think the swings were all gone.
Oh.
It was one of those metal A-frame
Yeah.
swing sets,
Yeah.
nothing like they have now, the play structures.
Right.
And so my friends and I, we were climbing up to the top bar, standing on that bar and jumping off to see who could jump the
Oh.
farthest away from the swing set.
Yeah.
So I had done it multiple times, and then the last time I just landed wrong and
Yeah.
ran in. I think my mom heard me screaming from the backyard, and she called our neighbor who was a nurse, and she came over and rushed me to the ER and
Uh-huh.
got it fixed. And it was really, really cool to have a cast for about 3 days because it was summer and it was hot and itchy. It was plaster. It's not like they wear
Yeah.
today. It was very heavy. So I had to have a sling, and it was my right arm, so I was in 2nd grade and I couldn't write.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
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 I remember once, we kinda lived near a hill, and I loved riding my bike down that hill. I remember once flipping over the handlebars, coming down that hill, and my bike hit something, and I flipped over the handlebars
Mm.
onto the pavement,
Mhm.
and I had 2 giant scabs, like, on each cheek on my face, and my nose
Mm.
was all scratched up, and I remember assuming that I would not be going to school looking like this. And my mom saw no reason that I should stay home from school. I was so mad at her, so embarrassed too, but you just went on.
Right, right. Nobody
Uh,
thought anything of it. Adaptive risk calibration. I think we probably did have that more for ourselves just because we had less supervision.
yeah.
So, I don't remember a lot of supervision. Like, my friend up the street, she lived on a farm and we played on her farm, but no one followed us around. So if we were swimming, nobody was watching us. If we were jumping off the hay mound, nobody was
Uh-huh.
watching us. If we're climbing up things or in fields or doing whatever, no one is necessarily saying, watch what you're doing, be careful.
Lots of climbing.
Yeah. People were expected to be able to look at a situation and use their heads.
On the other hand, that's probably why there were more broken bones though, because kids don't really and I think you actually learn it you actually learn it through the traumatic experience.
Right. Right.
And parents don't wanna I mean, naturally, you don't wanna let that happen to your kids, so I guess it's harder if you're there to watch it, but if
Sure.
you're not there, it just might happen.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, I've mostly played with boys too, I was very much a tomboy, and there just weren't as many girls around, and we always wanted to build our own treehouse, and I remember at one point, we said we built our own treehouse. I think we took 2 or 3 boards and nailed them to branches so we could sit on those boards. But, looking back, I think, okay, I was carrying a hammer, I was carrying nails
Mm. Mhm.
and boards high up in a tree. Like, that just right
Mhm.
there doesn't sound very safe.
Right, right. Yeah, I did have 2 brothers, and when I think about probably avoiding risk, particularly the brother right after me, the older of the 2, he, I'm sure, had many injuries because of risky boy behavior on bikes
Mhm.
and mini bikes and just all the things that boys get into, and I think that was just an expected part of that time period. Boys will be boys. Boys are gonna get roughed up. They're gonna break bones. They're gonna get hurt, and that's all the way they learn how to function in the world.
Yeah. On the other hand, I think we had 1 trip to the ER for my daughter because she had a bike accident. I think it was either her wrist. I remember she had to have an X-ray. It wasn't broken, but she had an X-ray. And I don't think my boys ever went to the ER other than maybe like a high fever or something else, but not
Mm.
not an injury.
Mhm.
So they might be a little abnormal in that way. I don't know because
Yeah.
they played outside a lot. I mean, they did.
Mhm. Yeah, or
Um,
maybe they were just fortunate, that they
and
didn't
they're
get
kind of
hurt.
they're a little on the cautious side too, so maybe that's it.
Yeah, yeah. Well, what's the third thing?
He called it comfortable solitude capacity. And they showed, like a child on the floor in his room listening to a stereo, like a record player,
Mhm.
or just laying out on the grass in a field talking with friends, or, just being okay being alone. And I will say, I probably did not have this trait because I did not like being alone. I was always looking for people.
Mm. Mhm.
But, I know John said this was something that he really enjoyed in
Mhm.
childhood. He would spend hours listening to his music or riding off on his bike alone, like, just exploring.
Mhm.
He enjoyed that.
Mhm. I had to be comfortable being alone, finding my own fun, and I had 3 siblings, but my mom and dad were not setting up activities for you to do at the beginning of the day, like, you had to
Mhm.
think of your own things to do, and I've always been fine entertaining myself. First of all, I was a voracious reader. I would read anything, starting from when you sit down at the table and you read the back of the cereal box all the way until you time you go to bed, like, I would read anything. I learned so much about the world through reading, and reading is a very
Yeah,
solitary activity.
and it did mention that. Yeah, it did say that we devoured books. I did not devour books, so that's why I didn't bring that up, but you're right, that is a very good use of time.
Yeah, and I love to draw,
Mhm.
and color and do paints or any kind of craft activities that we had. Listening to music is a great thing to do, and I can remember we had a little record player, and we didn't have that many, but I remember listening to them even as a child. Or you could listen to, I think maybe some of them would read you a book or something too. You could play that over and over again.
Some were like little plastic records that came in a book. Do you remember those? Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes we just had this room that wasn't used very often, and a lot of times I would go in and just make up my own thing to do. One of my favorite things to do was to be a talk show host because my mother loved to watch Phil Donahue, and I would, have many guests on that had the exact same problems as Phil Donahue and talk about them for hours by myself in the room.
You were guest and host?
Yes. I mean, I was perfectly capable of entertaining myself.
I remember lots of pretend games. I was a nurse or a doctor or a vet, and then I loved playing house. I did,
Mhm.
and I think I just
Mhm.
probably imitated my mom. I can't remember exactly, but I think lots of cleaning, pretend cleaning, and I would listen to the records on her stereo.
Mhm.
They were her records. It wasn't necessarily music I was listening to on my own, on the radio yet. But I just love doing that, and some music that I still love today is because of that sentimental
Mhm.
connection to that time. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember listening to my dad's 8 tracks, singing,
Oh.
dancing, pretending,
Mhm. Yeah.
there was just a lot of, pretend, like what you saw. I remember, when I don't know how old I was or what year was the Olympics, but I got to stay up and watch the ice skating, and then on the linoleum kitchen floor, I
Oh, yeah.
practiced ice skating for a very, very, very long time.
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. My mom had roller skates that were hers from childhood, well, like high school, and even though my feet weren't that big yet, I wore those, and she let me skate up and down the hall to the kitchen, through the dining room, back down the hall, and this was on carpet.
Mhm.
But I loved doing that. That was so
Yeah,
fun. Yeah, and I was always sports minded, Olympic minded, so, when
yeah.
we had a pool, I was doing dives. We were rating them on a scale of 1 to 10. We were
Yeah, there
Yeah.
was a lot of self-directed activity and play. That is something that I did encourage in my own children, even from the time they were babies. You're supposed to have periods of time where they have to entertain themselves,
Yeah.
and I did encourage that, but I will say that the pretend play, they really did have an awesome imagination, and they really did entertain themselves well in childhood, but I wish that they had to continue to entertain themselves even when they got to the
Mhm.
6th, 7th, 8th grade times, and instead by then, like, iPods and iPhones and things like that were coming out, and I feel like then they lost a lot of interest in ever entertaining themselves. And I think
Yeah.
that now when I look back, those were new things. Like, our kids
Yeah.
were experiencing those things for the first time. I don't think we really knew as parents what that might do to kids' brains.
Mhm.
But now I notice that my own daughter really keeps her children away from things like that. I just think that when they first came out for us, we didn't really understand what could happen.
Yeah, unfortunately, the technology comes out, and then the ethical considerations and the all the problems are addressed
Mhm.
later, after we've made mistakes. But I was reading somewhere recently that when technology comes out, there's always a trade-off. And this is just an extreme example, but, like, everybody used to gather around the fireplace. The hearth was the center of the home. Well, when the furnace came about, people don't gather around the furnace,
Mm.
Not to say
Mhm.
that furnaces are bad, but you just see the trade-off, like, you've lost
Mhm.
that central,
Mhm.
and that people used to gather around the piano and families sang. I mean, does your family sing much? No, like, other than church, and then church kinda became the the place that happened, or at school we did. But, and when you just listen to music and consume something that someone else has created, you become less interested in creating for yourself, you
Mm.
know?
Mhm.
Um, and I thought that was it. Not that I'm critiquing or criticizing advancements in technology, but there's just always a trade-off.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I think that's really true. It's easy to just be a consumer of everything instead of creating for yourself. The screen thing, like, it pointed out that screens demand our attention every 3 seconds, and I don't know if that's what the 3 seconds came from, but just, like, that's when things update or refresh, or,
Mhm.
or that's how often you get a notification, I don't know. But our brains now have constant stimulation, and I mean, that's just kinda defines modern life now.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that TV had been out for a couple generations, and we knew to keep our young children and elementary school children away from TV. Like, they could have TV time, but it was this time and this program.
But even then, it was more about the content, not the medium itself so much.
Well, except you didn't want their brain to turn to mush by having them watch too much
Well,
TV.
right, 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 but I mean, it was still largely about the content,
Right, it
and
was.
now we know that no matter what you're watching, it's not good, or, like, screen time.
Right.
It could always be good, but that's still not a good thing.
I do feel like, though, that the screen time that we had as kids enhanced my pretend play, like Little House on the Prairie. I mean, watching
Mhm.
Little House on the Prairie provided a lot of content for my own
Right.
imagination and play. The Dukes of Hazzard, my brother and I, we played that with our siblings over and over again. A-Team, a lot of those things gave us something to do then. We would play that. So I don't think
Yeah.
that it can always be bad, but it does need to be looked at with some thought and not just consumed thoughtlessly.
Yeah, and there was Romper Room and
Yeah, there was a lot of educational
a
TV.
lot of educational stuff, yeah, and,
And there was also the
um,
opportunity to just not be educated. Like, on Saturday mornings, we were allowed to get up and pour our own cereal and watch cartoons
watch cartoons.
as much as we wanted to. But the reason my parents could say as much as you wanted to was because they went off the air around 9 or 10. Like, there weren't
Mhm.
anymore. If you had 3
Yeah,
channels and they all switched over adult programming, well, now you're done for the day.
yeah.
And so nobody had to police it because it was just over.
Oh, I know. I remember during the weekday, I was watching my shows, whatever they were, Sesame Street, Mister Rogers, Captain Kangaroo. And then when adult programming came on, I remember it was The Big Valley. And it was like, oh, it was like my day was over. It was just so depressing. I thought, who would ever enjoy a show like that? It just seems so dull. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so, like, adult shows weren't even tempting to me because they just seemed so boring.
Okay, so that was the being comfortable with solitude and
Yeah,
entertaining yourself.
and the next one was analog patience, and I thought this was kind of a fun one. They said that waiting was just built into life. You waited on everything, and, you waited for your favorite show to come on next week. There was
Mhm.
no binge watching. There was really no recording, probably not until high school for me could you
Mhm.
record something. So if
Mhm.
you missed it, you missed it.
Mhm.
And, I loved that everybody was kind of on the same schedule because you knew what everybody else was watching.
Mhm.
They said, you took photos and you waited days to see if they even turned out.
Mhm.
If you wanted to talk to someone, you memorized their home number and then you hoped they were home.
Mhm.
And most likely you had to talk to the parents first. I remember at a certain age, my parents let me answer the phone, but I remember a lot of kids weren't allowed to answer the home phone. Their parents
Mm.
had to answer it.
Mhm.
And then when I did answer it, it was pool residents, with whom would you like
Mhm.
to speak? And,
Mhm.
not just what do you want or hello. So these things kind of all trained you in patience. Even just dialing the phone, I eventually had push button phones, but initially it was the rotary phone. So
Mhm.
you had to wait for that little dial to go all the way around for 7 numbers, and if you messed up, you started all all over
Mhm.
again, and
Mhm.
so, I thought it was funny during when I was thinking about using the phone, I lived in the same house until I was married, so I still remember that phone number.
I mean, I still remember my phone number because I had it till I went to college. I mean,
Yeah,
it's the first number you ever learned, so, and
yeah,
then I remember my one friend's,
I do too.
phone number too, but only one of them.
Yeah,
Probably
that's what
because
I
it was
wrote
the
mine
first one
down
I
and my
learned.
friend. Yeah.
Yeah.
One other thing I remember about waiting is, on Sunday afternoons especially, I would be with my friend and we would tape our favorite songs while listening to the Casey Kasem Top 40 Countdown,
Mm.
because I wanted a tape for the week that had all my favorite music because, I mean, you couldn't go, you'd have to go and buy a record or a tape of
Mhm.
each artist, and I wanted a whole mixtape.
Right, right.
And so and you had to, be ready because you didn't want all the talking at the beginning and you wanted to
Sure.
get it off, cut it off right at the end of the song so you had this nice tape.
Right.
And that just seems so foreign now, such hard work to
I
listen to
know.
music.
I know.
But if not, you were just at the mercy of the DJ to play your song.
Right, right. There definitely was a lot of waiting built into life and just times when you were expected to just be bored, even riding in cars or going on a trip. I mean, often I did bring a book along, but my parents weren't packing a bag full of things to keep you entertained in the car or
No.
I mean, you were expected to entertain yourself or look out the window.
The only place I remember my mom kind of entertaining me was in the doctor's office if I was sick. She would make a little game on a piece of paper, like connecting the dots or,
That's what
some
my
kind of puzzle
grandmother would do
game.
for me.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember her doing that, but that was about the only place that I don't know, I guess I was pitiful at that point, so she
Yeah.
felt the need to entertain, but yeah, there wasn't much. Yeah, it's funny about in the car, you didn't yeah, mom never packed anything.
I saw this Instagram reel once. It's this like boomer dad. He shows up at a flight with nothing. Not a phone, not a book, not a nothing. And he's just going to sit on the flight and just be present and fly. And that's how my dad would show up to the airport. Like, no entertainment, just gonna ride the plane. And we don't even think about doing that anymore. Like, even myself, I'm like, all right, what shows can I download from Netflix? What podcast? What book? I don't want to be bored on the plane. But there were generations before us and us when we were small. Boredom was a part of life, and no one was going to entertain you while you travel.
Yeah, and it's funny because I still do download podcasts, have my phone charged, bring the earbuds, maybe think about a movie, but most of the time I end up just sitting there
Oh,
in
okay.
total quiet and I enjoy it. I find that I just don't enjoy listening or watching.
Mm,
Even on like overseas flights, it's hard
mhm.
for me to watch a movie. I mean, I have done it, but it's just not I would sometimes just rather sit and be quiet.
My mom said that she likes to sit and watch that, dot as you're
Yeah.
flying overseas. I mean, the thing barely moves. I'm sorry, I cannot do that for 8 hours.
That's funny because that's what I do.
Oh.
And that was on our trip, overseas with our friends. I'm the one that said, "Hey, guys, we're turning around." And they were like, "What are you talking about?" Because you can't feel the plane turning around, and we were halfway across the ocean, and we turned around, and they were like, "What are you talking about?" I said, "The dot turned around."
Oh, do I even wanna know that? That's the question.
Well, yeah, I mean, we
Do
had to go back to empty the toilets.
Oh, that's just too discouraging. Way
Yeah,
too
it was,
discouraging.
it was.
So, a lot of analog patience. What was the last one, Julie?
The last one was unsupervised autonomy. So, just the freedom to roam the neighborhood on bikes or walk in the woods. Or I remember I had a friend that lived probably a mile or 2 from my house, and that was kind of a big deal when I would ride to her house. I was tired when I got there, and,
Mhm.
I remember one road was a little busier than normal, and it didn't have sidewalks or a shoulder or anything, so that made me a little nervous, but, yeah, and I thought, I probably didn't call my mom when I got there. There was no tracking device, no "I'm here." It was kind of like no news is good news. If I didn't hear anything, like she didn't show up, then she's there. Yeah, I rode to the park, played at friends' houses. I remember there was this little convenience store kind of outside the next neighborhood, and that was just really cool to get to ride my bike to get candy. And it was
Mhm.
usually, candy cigarettes.
Yeah, I know.
There was even on the way, there was an old graveyard, and I remember that was cool, like, only the big kids went in there, and that did scare me.
Yeah, there was a lot of autonomy not being supervised because you couldn't be connected all the time.
Mhm.
Now, we can call someone so easily, find out where they are, what they're doing, they can text you, but I don't think my parents expected to know where we were and what we were doing all the time. It would have been impossible to know where we were and doing all the time because you didn't have access to all that.
Yeah.
Um, my mom started working when I think was in 4th grade. She would leave and then I was expected to get everybody else on the bus. Well, if we made it on the bus, fine, and if we didn't, there wasn't anything she could do about it, and, a few times I just decided on my own that I don't feel good today, you 3 get on the bus, and I'm just gonna go in and have a day to myself. Like, you had a lot of autonomy because nobody what are they gonna do? Like, they're already at work, and they're not gonna it wasn't
Right.
even like I was doing like, I considered it something bad, I was just allowed to make my own decision. That was an
Uh-huh.
autonomous decision. I don't feel good today, so I stayed home.
So, therefore
You were expected to, I think, rise to the occasion more and take care of things more and do more. Like, this always sticks out in my mind. I think I was in high school by this point, but probably not super into high school. And my sister and I think my brother got lice. And my mom was at work, so the nurse called me. And I had to take them home, and I had to start the lice shampoo, and I had to start
Oh my
stripping all
goodness.
the beds and doing all the vacuuming. And I was expected to follow the instructions on the nurse's sheet and do what was and nobody said, like, "Do you think you can handle this?" Like, you were just expected to rise to the occasion. We have lice, get started on it.
Of course, you were probably highly
Well,
motivated.
I was because I shared a room with my sister, and I wanted to not have lice.
Now, my mom did go to work when I was in 1st or 2nd grade, but she worked part-time, so she wasn't gone all day. But I think she knew that if I needed anything, there was other people around that could
Mhm.
help.
Yeah.
Um, and even though talk back to autonomy and freedom to go places, she did have rules about whose house I could go in and whose I probably shouldn't.
Mhm.
And I think there's enough fear in me as to why would she say that, that I didn't wanna go in those houses. I did have the freedom to sleep over at friends' houses, but not everybody's. There were people that she felt safe, but, I don't even know if kids will get to do that anymore?
And I honestly can't blame parents for not letting them.
Oh, I know. I'm saying I'm not blaming the parent, it's the world we live in?
Right.
There was a lot of trust. Our parents had a lot of trust in us to be
Mhm.
responsible, to make good decisions. And even if I trust my kids, I don't trust the world now, you
Right.
know? So,
And we didn't always rise to the occasion. I mean, I
you
we
know
didn't always make good choices or do good things when we should have. But I think that I don't know, maybe the stakes weren't as high or I don't know, like I'm just thinking
Mhm.
of even like fourth or fifth grade sleepovers, maybe the parents went to bed and that person had an HBO account, so maybe you could watch like horror movies or something, or
Mhm.
things that like your parents probably wouldn't have said, yeah, go and do, and you didn't go home and advertise that you'd done it. But I also learned through those things like, well, what do I like and what can I handle and what's a good situation and what's a bad situation. And I don't know, there was a lot of opportunity to make decisions for yourself. And even if you made a bad one, then you tended not to repeat it.
Yeah, it's a little different, that consequence, and having some stalker on the internet finding out
Right.
your address, and, like, those are very different consequences.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and it also kind of told you, I remember I had some things happen like that, that I was a little afraid to stand up against, so I kind of just went along, something like that, like watching something or whatever. And then I just kind of knew, I don't think I want to go back there next time. It
Mhm.
kind of just
Mhm.
taught you, and it wasn't like a parent had to say, you are not allowed to go there. It was, I made that decision for myself.
Mhm.
Now it could have gone the other way, and I could have said, hey, I'm going there every,
Sure.
all the time to do that. But at
Right.
least, I had that choice.
Right. Think of the babysitting now. Like, I mean, you could start babysitting at like 11 or 12 and like
12.
be in
Yeah.
charge of other kids for the summer. Like, it's a like, I think that's probably a pendulum that is good that is swung the other way.
Yes. Yes.
Because I can remember helping my friends babysit, and we were not babysitting. We were doing everything else at the person's house except babysitting. Like, there really were some situations that probably should have been better supervised for the sake of their own kids and for us. So,
Hmm.
like, there's definitely a trade-off. Like, I was talking to one of my kids, and I don't know if this is why generations are like this, but I said, I think that pendulums swing back and forth. So, like, our generation, they always talk about Generation X raised themselves and, you
Mm.
know, nobody was doing everything for them and they were unsupervised and all the things. And I think because I am Gen X, I probably went a little bit further on the pendulum for my own kids and supervised and was more involved because I knew what could happen. And I said now to my daughters who were kind of complaining about some of the things I did, maybe when you have kids, you'll swing the pendulum a little bit the other
Mhm.
way and be like, you know what, I didn't like my mom was always in my business and I'm gonna, but I think that nobody can get it perfect. And so it goes back and forth, maybe. I don't know.
Yeah, and in all fairness, sadly, probably there were people that were hurt by growing up in a childhood that maybe they were a little neglected, or, lived next to a bad neighbor. I'm not saying this was the perfect world. Like, there were probably some opportunities for things to go sideways.
Mhm.
Um, so I appreciate that, but, I felt like I was very protected as a child. I mean, and I think providentially protected, I don't mean my parents were protected,
Mhm.
because I did have a lot of freedom and nothing bad happened, because it certainly wasn't, impossible for that to be true, you know?
Mhm. Yeah. Well, I was wondering, like, what do you see different about maybe how your grandchildren are being raised? Or do you see your kids doing anything different, trying to maybe recapture some of that?
Well, I know she's very, protective of with screen time. He
Mhm.
doesn't, that's limited. She's very intentional and thoughtful about that. They both are. So, and I hear that he plays with the neighbors' kids. He goes outside and plays, but I don't think he goes into their homes.
Mhm.
It's just outside in the front yard, or they have, I think he's starting to have some play dates from kindergarten, but she knows those parents, and,
Mhm. Mhm.
so, I know I kind of grieved for my kids because I just really loved my childhood so much that they couldn't do that,
Mm.
that they couldn't. I mean, they did play outside, but I always knew where they were.
Mhm.
And just the kind of the sadness that there weren't a lot of other kids out there doing it,
Mhm.
there
Mhm.
just wasn't a lot of people to play with. Yeah, I mean, I think as much as she can, she would like to see it that way. It's just, is it a safe environment to do it now? I don't know.
Mhm.
Because with technology, I think part of the problem is that you can limit it at your own home, and then they can go to a friend's house who's in 2nd grade and has a phone, you know?
Mhm. Mhm.
And you're like, "No, that's not that's not gonna happen." So,
Yeah. I noticed that with my grandchildren that screen time is very limited, and if they do get screen time, my daughter has talked about slow TV. So, like,
yeah.
there's fast TV where the images are constantly changing, and then there's slow TV, which is kind of probably what my kids grew up on, so, like, a lot of those same shows, and they just don't move with the speed
Yeah, the
that
animation.
yeah, and
Yeah,
everything.
he watches the old Spider-Man. He watches the old Pink Panther,
Yeah.
the old Thomas the Tank, none of the
Right.
and he's seen Disney movies, but that's a treat. That's on Friday night. They watch a movie every Friday night. And so he's seen current Disney movies as he's been able to sit longer, for those.
Yeah.
But as far as just TV, yeah, it's usually the older stuff that was made during this time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because the kind of at the end of the video, it said, this was a quote, "We survived a childhood that would get most parents arrested today." And I thought that's really
Yes.
true. Yes.
It's true.
I think they were talking about things like car seats and seat belts. And, I rode in the back window of my car so I could lay
Mhm.
down and look out the window. Um, I drove my dad's truck when I was probably 10. It was at
Mm.
my grandmother's farm in a field, not
Mhm.
on the road, but,
Yeah.
probably
Yeah.
wouldn't let my kids do that. And one thing I remember is my dad he had a truck, and when all the kids were out playing in the summer, after dinner, we'd, be playing hide and seek or whatever. And he would offer to take the neighborhood kids to 7-Eleven to get a Slurpee.
Mm.
And so everybody just went home and got their 50 cents, or sometimes my dad would treat. And we all just piled in the back of his truck. I
Mhm.
mean, 8 kids. Parents were like, "Sure, go ahead, hop on in."
Right. Right.
And, I mean, that was not illegal at the time, and now, see, I would never do that. I probably wouldn't even put my dog I had to sign a thing when I adopted my dog that I would never let him ride in an open bed of a truck. That was in the adoption papers.
Well, and you never would because you don't wanna be sued by someone's parent.
Well, it does
So
sound like a bad idea.
well, it does, but it's also feels like kind of a rite of passage too. So
Yeah, it does. I don't know.
but I think that's what I'm talking about, like, society, you'd either be sued or arrested or
Or ostracized.
or
Yeah.
ostracized for some of these things, so you don't dare do them. An interesting thing that I read this week, which had to have been an incredibly hard decision to make, but this kid really rose to the occasion. There was a mom, and I'll probably get a little bit of the story wrong, but there was a mom and I think like maybe 2 younger kids and then maybe like a 12-year-old that were just paddleboarding in the ocean, and they just
Mhm.
drifted out like a couple miles farther than they thought they would, and they thought someone would notice they were gone and like come and get them.
Mhm.
And it was dark, it was getting to be dark,
Oh,
and she kinda had to make the decision on, "No one's coming for us, so what are we gonna do?" So, I think he was 12. She basically said to her 12-year-old, "Do you think you can swim back to shore and get someone?" And these were in shark-infested waters. She must have drifted out even farther than a couple miles, maybe, I'm not sure. Anyways, it took him 4 hours. For the first 2 hours, he swam with a life jacket, and then I don't think he felt like he was making much progress, so
mhm.
he got rid of the life jacket and swam another 2 hours, Julie. I mean, talk about
Yeah.
a kid that rose to the occasion.
Wow.
Got help, and then they went out and rescued his mom and little siblings, but isn't that
Wow.
amazing? Like,
Yeah.
sometimes kids can really sometimes we don't understand or give them credit for what they really could accomplish.
And he was probably more fit than the mom to do it,
Well,
really.
yeah, I mean, I guess she could have done it, but then I guess she would have been leaving
She
the
had
other
to leave her
kids with her
kids, yeah.
12-year-old. Yeah, I mean, there was no good it was one of those horrible situations where you're
Yeah.
drowning and what kid do you save in the boat? Like, someone asked you a
Yeah.
hypothetical. It was a terrible situation all the way around, but she kind of felt like this was her best bet, and he rose to the occasion and did it.
Yeah, that's
So,
amazing.
that's amazing, but anyways, if it had gone the other way, her name would have been Mud.
Yeah, like, "How dare you?"
Yes. Yes, so
Or where was your beacon, uh, on your life jacket? Why didn't you have a locator beacon on your life jacket?
right, right. So,
Yeah.
I don't know, but certainly there are a lot of differences.
Yeah. So those were all his categories, and I just thought, I don't know, just they resonated a lot with me, and, I do look back on those years as fun and good, and
Mhm.
kinda feel bad for the generations that don't get to do that, and one of the things he pointed out in the video, he was trying to make a claim that because of all these things like self-directed problem solving, adaptive risk calibration, it made us into these terrific people,
Mm,
which,
mhm.
I do think those things can build good qualities in people. Not
Mhm.
necessarily, though. But to look at it in the reverse, I wonder as we get further and further away from that, how it'll affect how it will affect kids
Mhm.
becoming adults. Will they be anxious? Will they be risk takers at all? Will they be able to wait in long lines?
Mhm.
Will they need supervision forever? I don't know. It's
Right.
interesting to think about.
Yeah, yeah. I feel for today's parents. It's hard to go against the grain, and in whatever aspect they're managing to go against the grain, I give them a lot of credit because
Mhm.
they are fighting an uphill battle, really.
Well, and it's like you have to create false situations. They don't just seem to come about naturally. You're having to
Mhm.
create these imagined thing, like let's pretend it's this way to try to teach you something because the real world, I can't teach you in the real world anymore.
Right.
It's just not safe.
Yeah.
Like, making things hard for your kids. And I think the book, there's a book by a Scandinavian author that's called, There's No Such Thing as, Bad Weather, Just Bad Clothing. Have you ever heard of that
Oh,
book?
yeah, I have. Uh-huh.
And I may have gotten that a little bit wrong, but they talk about that, like, risk taking, like letting kids climb trees and walk in creeks and not be there just to catch every little
Mhm.
fall, that is building something in your kids, both physically and mentally.
Mhm.
It's giving them a skill. Um,
And I think we have to watch ourselves because Julie and I live in a neighborhood where I do see a lot of kids out playing and doing things. But you know what I also see? I also see a lot of people on the neighborhood Facebook page saying, "Who's supervising these kids? Who's letting their kid
yeah,
do that on their own? Who would let their kid go out and do that?" And I mean, this is like playing in creeks, riding their
yeah.
bikes, riding scooters. I mean, not vandalism. Obviously, we should be aware if our kid is vandalizing. No one is saying that. But just like being unsupervised out
It's like it's
there.
a shock to people to see it,
Yes. And they're constantly talking about the dangers of it. Like, I think there were some spots in the neighborhood, I might be getting it wrong, where you could, like, do a wheelie or, you
Oh, yeah, I
know.
was gonna bring that up. It's right by me.
Okay.
So, yeah, there's this green space that's just green. I mean, it's not even attractive. It doesn't have any special plants. It's just grass at the kind of the exit of the neighborhood. And there was a nice little hill. It was like it was in 2 levels, a low level and a high level, and you had to go up this hill. So kids were taking their bikes over there and then running up that hill and using it like a jump.
Mhm.
And it was funny because when I would go by, I was like, "Man, that looks like fun." Like, I used to build ramps and stuff to jump our bikes. And I started noticing on the neighborhood Facebook that, some people were like, "Who are these kids? What are they doing?" And others were like, "Go kids." At least they're not
Mhm.
on their phone or their tablet or
Right.
whatever, and they're outside and they're playing together. So
Right.
people would start giving them, like, the thumbs up and honking at them
Mhm.
when they'd go by. Well, the other side won out because they put a little sign up there saying, "Don't no bikes allowed.
Mm. Mhm.
No motorized things or bikes allowed." Well, they just every time I go by, the kids were still there. So finally, there's an official no trespassing sign. So it makes it more legal, I think.
Mm.
And it
Mhm.
stopped. And I just thought that was kind of sad. Like these kids had found something really fun
Yeah.
and they looked very united. They were,
Yeah.
outside in the air.
I know. I can understand really both sides of that because on the one hand, I'm like, that is so good for kids, and if a few arms are broken, a few arms are broken.
Mhm.
But it's a sue-happy society, and you know what's going to happen when someone's arms get broken or if there's an injury? The parents are going to sue the neighborhood, and we're all going to end up paying for that. So, like, I can
But I
see
think, what
both
would you sue? It's
sides.
not like there's any equipment.
Well,
It's
you
just
believe
dirt.
me, Julie. Believe me. If you can
Well, then
sue over something.
they should take the playgrounds away then, or the pool, because, those are
Well,
way more
there's
dangerous.
probably insurance around those, and
Yeah.
rules, but like this is just something like I am sure it was a suing situation, a liability issue. And so that's a sad thing because when we grew up and got injured at something, our parents never thought about suing. They were like, use
Mm-mm.
your head next time. Don't do something so stupid. And now it's like, well, who can I blame and get
Mhm.
money from?
Yeah.
Who's
Sadly,
responsible
that's true.
for this? Not my kid. It must be someone else's fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Sad.
So but I totally get it. But that's a perfect example of if we
Uh-huh.
do see kids being unsupervised playing, we need to remember that you can't have it both ways. You can't bemoan that kids are inside on their screens, not out experiencing the real world, and then complain when they actually do go outside. You can't have it both
Yeah.
ways.
I love seeing them at our little park. I mean, there's little kids on scooters flying around the sidewalks on that thing, and then they put a
Mhm.
thing up, no scooters on the sidewalks. I think, so now you want them in the road? Oh,
I
I don't
think it's
know.
the liability again, but
Yeah,
yeah.
but one thing you ask about what my daughter might be doing differently is, they live about 3 houses down from a park, really nice park, and it has a walking trail, and there is this huge cedar tree on the trail, and it has some low limbs that are almost at right angles to the ground, perfect climbing tree. And I have a picture of Ezra way up in that tree,
Mm.
and she said that we call this the climbing tree, and she lets him go up it, and I climbed it with him.
Mm.
And I just think that's probably one of her ways is, I'm not gonna tell him no,
Mhm.
he could fall a long distance, but I'm not gonna tell him no. So
Right.
I was proud of her for that.
That's good. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really good. Don't let the park find out about it. They'll probably put a sign, "No climbing."
A little fence around it,
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, listeners, we would love to hear from you. Tell us what you think about the 70s and 80s childhoods versus now, different things you used to do as you were a child that you look back on fondly, ways that you would like to see things change. Whatever your thoughts are on this, come and find us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast or email us at midlifematterspodcast@gmail.com. All right, Julie, this was a great discussion. I'm going to keep a lot of
Yeah.
this in mind. I'm sure it's not going to be the last time we think about this, and I appreciate you bringing this reel to our attention.
Yeah, I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it.
All right, Mindy, we hope you're feeling better and are with us next week. And Julie, I'll talk to you next week.
Okay. Bye.
Talk to you later. Bye. We're so happy you joined us today. You can find the show notes for this episode at midlifematterspodcast.com. Also, please tell a friend about the show and help them hit the free subscribe button on their favorite podcast app. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at Midlife Matters Podcast. That's where we post pictures and stories about all the things we talk about in each episode. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.